The intervening nights of 8 to 9th May have been sleepless for each civilian, especially for those residing on the Indo-Pak borders and for those who have their loved ones nearing it. As uncertainty clouds news on development at the borders, many innocent civilians in the states of Jammu and Kashmir, Punjab, Rajasthan, Gujarat are being subjected to Pakistan's indiscriminate shelling, drone attacks, and unfortunate killings in some cases. Dear viewers, I'm Anmol Kaur and welcome to this segment where we understand international humanitarian law in context of the ongoing conflict. While our defense forces are unflinching in their efforts to protect us, what is the extent to which Pakistan has violated international humanitarian law? From a global standpoint, what is the degree of protection needed to be ensured to each civilian in international armed conflicts as per law? After the gruesome Pahalgam attack on April 22 by Pak-backed terrorists, there has been significant escalation of tensions between India and Pakistan. India on 7th May carried out Operation Sindoor in Pak-occupied Kashmir as a retaliation to the killings of the 25 Indians and one Nepali citizen. As per the official statement of the government, the operation was carried out in a restrained and careful manner, targeting 9 sites of terrorist infrastructure. However, the retaliation of Pakistan has led to many Indian civilians across the western border of India witnessing excessive shelling, which is not just limited to the militarized regions of Jammu and Kashmir, but extending to all other adjoining states at the line of control. As tensions escalate, many have raised concerns on Pakistan's retaliation to be in violation of the principle of proportionality as per the international law. Let us dig deeper into this aspect. What is this doctrine of proportionality all about? The roots of proportionality trace back to the medieval warfare, where the concept of just war meant that the benefits of war should not be greater than the destructiveness it causes. In simple terms, it requires the conflicting countries to ensure reasonable restraint on the damage they cause in their armed attacks. Let us understand how the doctrine has developed over the years and its present form. The doctrine first seemed to have crystallized in the form of a written rule or regulation in the 1907 Hague Regulations concerning the laws and customs of war on land. Here, several important provisions focus on ensuring that during an armed attack, countries avoid unnecessary suffering. For instance, Article 25 of the regulations prohibited attack or bombardment on undefended towns, villages, dwellings, or buildings. Similarly, Article 23, subclause E, specifically forbids the employment of arms, projectiles, or material calculated to cause unnecessary suffering. However, the explicit formulation of the proportionality as a legal standard emerged in the 1970s, notably in the aftermath of the World War II's aerial bombings, which highlighted the need for clearer rules to protect civilians. The doctrine was properly embodied in the first additional protocol to the Geneva Conventions adopted in 1977. This protocol refers to the protection of victims in international armed conflicts and supplements the Geneva Conventions. It introduces detailed rules concerning the occurrence of hostilities, the protection of civilians, and the treatment of combatants and prisoners of war. The doctrine is reflected in Article 51, which outlines the legal obligations of parties or countries in conflict to protect civilian population. Subclause 4 of the article defines 3 situations which qualify as indiscriminate attacks, which are prohibited. These include: number 1, attacks that do not aim at a particular military target. Number 2, using weapons or tactics incapable of being aimed at a specific target. Number 3, utilizing weapons or tactics, the impact of which cannot be confined to military objectives alone. And as a consequence, these attacks are of such a nature that target both military objectives and civilians or civilian objectives without any distinction. An example of such an indiscriminate attack would be launching attacks that may cause excessive civilian harm compared to the anticipated military advantage, or bombing multiple distinct military targets in a city without distinguishing between them. Now, to remove any doubts on what is meant by a military objective, Article 52 of the protocol defines both civilian objects and military objectives. What are these? Paragraph 1 of Article 52 states, and I quote, "Civilian objects shall not be the object of attack or of reprisals." Civilian objects are all objects which are not military objectives as defined in paragraph 2. Paragraph 2 defines what constitutes as military objectives, and I quote, Attacks shall be limited strictly to military objectives. Insofar as objects are concerned, military objectives are limited to those objects which are by their nature, location, purpose, or use make an effective contribution to the military action and whose total or partial destruction, capture, or neutralization in the circumstances ruling at that time offers a definite military advantage. Essentially, military objectives become those target points which help the efforts of the attacking military, and the destruction, capture, or neutralization of such points clearly would benefit the attacker in that situation. Now, interestingly, apart from the paragraph 4, which provides 3 specific definitions for indiscriminate attack, paragraph 5 of Article 51 further describes 2 more situations which can be considered as indiscriminate attack. These include A. Bombing by any methods or means which treats multiple separate military targets in a city or town as one big target, especially when civilians or civilian buildings are also in the same area. And B, an attack which is likely to cause civilian deaths, injuries, or damage to the civilian property that would be too much as compared to a situation where the attack is anticipated to have a direct military gain. Notably, Part B requires the attacking country to make feasible calculations and take measures to first verify that the targets are military objectives and not civilians. And if any of the conflicting parties violates these prohibitions mentioned earlier, paragraph 8 of Article 51 clearly states that conflicting parties cannot be excused from fulfilling their obligations to take precautionary measures under Article 57. So if any disproportionate or indiscriminate attack takes place by one of the countries conflicting with the other, it cannot be a reason for both of the countries or parties to violate precautionary measures. What are the precautions as per Article 57 which are to be taken while conducting military operations? The 3 precautionary measures that the countries in conflict have to take care of can be understood in 9 major points. In any military action, make civilian safety your top concern. 2. Verify your target. Before attacking, do everything you can to be sure it's a lawful military target and not a person or place that's protected. For example, a civilian, homes, hospitals, or even cultural and religious heritage sites. 3. Choose the least harmful method. Use weapons, timings, tactics that minimize the chance of killing or injuring civilians or damaging the civilian property. 4. Don't attack if harm is excessive. If the likely civilian damage outweighs the clear military gain, cancel the attack. 5. Stop if circumstances change. If you learn mid-attack that the target is in military or civilian harm is too high, suspend or call off the strike immediately. 6. Warn civilians when possible. If you can, give people advance notice of the attack so they can move to safety. 7. Pick the safer target. If 2 equally valid military targets exist, strike the one that will pose the least risk to civilians and civilian objects. 8. Apply at sea and in the air too. The same precautions apply to naval and aerial operations. Always plan to protect the civilians. 9. No attacks on civilians. Nothing in Article 51 ever allows deliberately targeting civilians or civilian places. This leads us to the main question now. Are India and Pakistan bound by the additional protocols? As of August 2024, 174 countries have ratified both the additional protocols. Pakistan is only a signatory to the protocols since December 12, 1977, but has not ratified it. India, on the other hand, has neither been a signatory nor has ratified either of the protocols. Before we delve further on the implication of this upon the ongoing armed conflict, let us understand the key difference between 1. Being a signatory, 2. Being a ratified state, 3. Falling in none of the 2 categories. Being a signatory to a protocol means expressing your intentions to abide by and agree to the terms of the treaty. This means that the signatory state may not necessarily give a formal consent to be legally bound by the treaty. Ratification, on the other hand, means the country gives express consent to be legally bound by the treaty, both at the international level and at the domestic level by passing domestic legislations based on the said international treaty. So clearly, Pakistan, being a signatory to the additional protocol 1, has expressed its intention to abide and agree by the terms of the protocol, which also includes all the provisions based on doctrine of proportionality and the need for precautionary measures. This also leads us to another question. What happens to India if it has neither signed or ratified the protocols? In a way, India, under the customary international law, still has to abide by the doctrine of proportionality. Simply put, unlike the international treaties, which are binding on the states only upon their signature or ratification, Customary international laws are unwritten rules that have been crystallized over the years of consistent and general practices of the states. These customary principles are followed across the globe as means of common practice and are binding on all the countries. In view of the same, the International Committee of the Red Cross has listed 161 rules recognized as customary international law. Amongst these rules, Rule 11 declares prohibition on indiscriminate attacks and includes Article 51, Paragraph 4 within its fold. Rule 12 accepts the definition of indiscriminate attacks under Article 52 of the Additional Protocol 1. Rule 13 adopts Article 51, Paragraph 5, Part A relating to indiscriminate bombings. And most importantly, Rule 14 declares the need for proportionality and attacks as per Article 51, Paragraph 5, Part B, which relates to attacks on civilians in excessive measures, while Rule 15 adopts the principle of precautions in attack in terms of Article 57. So clearly, India too is bound by Articles 51, 52 and 57 of the Additional Protocol 1. This leads us to the main question: has Pakistan's retaliation led to severe violation of the principle of proportionality and precautionary measures? As per the official statement of the Indian government, Pakistan in its retaliation on the intervening night of May 7 to 8 has, and I quote, attempted to engage a number of military targets in northern and western India, including Awantipura, Srinagar, Jammu, Pathankot, Amritsar, Kapurthala, Jalandhar, Ludhiana, Adampur, Bhatinda, Chandigarh, Nal, Falodi, Uttarlai, and Bhuj, using drones and missiles. All these attacks were successfully neutralized by the integrated counter-UAS grid and air defense systems. When India responded by neutralizing an air defense system in Lahore, Pakistan has caused unrestrained firing and shelling across the line of control in civilian-occupied regions of Kupwara, Baramulla, Uri, Poonch, Mendhar and Rajouri sectors in Jammu and Kashmir. On the subsequent night of May 8th to 9th, the Pakistani military launched attacks on the major civilian dwelling cities in the bordering states. These included Jammu city, Udhampur, Jaisalmer, Jodhpur, Amritsar, Barmer, Bikaner. India successfully intercepted these attacks using its S-400 missile defense system. Notably, the indiscriminate firings and shellings by Pakistan so far, as per the recent press release of the Indian government on 8th May, led to a loss of 16 innocent civilians, including 3 women and 5 children. While there is international pressure on both the countries to immediately de-escalate the armed tensions, one can only hope for mutual resolutions soon. Thank you for watching. Do like, comment, share and subscribe to Live Law for more such videos. Jai Hind.